Why do you hate everybody? Why are you trying to scold me? Baby, when you could just hold me. Oh, Mary, Mary Sue. Oh, Mary, Mary Sue.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Eric Reads Idiotic Blog Posts in a British Accent. We'll get to that in a second. This one is about Agatha All Along. There's a post in the Mary Sue, which is my favorite website on the internet, mostly because it gives me such great low-hanging fruit to make fun of. But I actually have been enjoying Agatha All Along, and there's a new episode out today. I haven't watched it yet because it's not out yet, but I think it's kind of a fun show. I don't know, it's not for everybody, and I've talked about this before. We should be able to sort of compartmentalize, if that's the right word. We should be able to say, hey, this show in the MCU is geared more towards women, and this show is geared more towards men. And the same thing in Star Wars. There should be shows that are geared more towards different demographics. I mean, if that's the smart business decision, right? Like if I were Disney, Lucasfilm, Marvel, if I were in charge, I would think, okay, we need to target our main demographic, right, which is men and boys, but we should also make stuff for other demographics. And a show like Agatha All Along, I think, has actually wider appeal than just women, obviously. I mean, I enjoy it, but it is sort of, obviously targeted more towards that female demographic. And that's fine. And I think the problem that we've seen with so many shows and movies lately is that they've been forgetting their core demographic and making, all this, stuff like The Acolyte and She-Hulk and so many things that just feel like, wait, did you forget like the main people who enjoy this stuff are men, boys, and women who like the stuff that men and boys like? You can't forget your core demographic, and I've beaten that dead horse over and over again, so I won't do that too much today. Oh, sorry, I might be getting a little cold. But anyways, there's this article here, like clockwork, here come the angry men review bombing Agatha All Along, by Rachel Leishman. Now, I will point out that on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score and the critic score is almost identical. Critics have an 83%, and audiences have an 81%. So, as far as I can tell, at least on Rotten Tomatoes, there is no review bombing going on. People generally like the show. Maybe not love it. We're not talking 100% here. Plenty of critical reviews, plenty of viewers who don't think it's that great. But overall, The Acolyte had 18% last I checked. So we're not looking at a similar situation here with full-fledged review bombing going on, which says to me, pretty much, that this show is actually pretty good. Like, it's okay. It's all right. Like, people are enjoying it. And from a lot of people I've talked to or I've seen online, they're like, yeah, it's pretty fun. It's good. Like, it's well written. It's fine. It's nothing to write home about, but it's all right. But because people like Rachel Leishman, the author of this article, really only exist to act aggrieved and put upon, and they just fan outrage. That's their whole modus operandi. Like, the only thing that they want, nobody wants this to get review bombed more than the writers at the Mary Sue. That's the crazy thing about this, right? They pretend like they really, really want these shows to do well and everyone should love them, but they're just so eager to find the villains who are hateful, toxic fans, blah, blah, blah. So, let us read. Let us proceed. I really do wish these guys were a bit more exciting. Instead, every time a show comes out that has women in it, they take to review bombing it. It. At this point, I just find people who do this boring and predictable anymore. It's so funny because it's so predictable and boring to read an article like this at the Mary Sue. Like, it's like clockwork. Here comes the Mary Sue article complaining about angry men. Even when we have to invent them. Fans began realizing that the gradient of reviews for Agatha All Along were split between 10/10 on IMDb and then a resounding 1 out of 10, having the most votes on the scale. Yeah, this is how so many shows are these days. It's hardly like some revelation. Anything that has any ounce of controversy, which is everything in Marvel and Star Wars, is going to have a split between 10 out of 10 and 1 out of 10. Notice, though, in this article, you will notice that there's no mention of Rotten Tomatoes. It's only IMDb. Where the show is doing okay, also. I think it's a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, which usually trends lower than Rotten Tomatoes, just by the nature of how things are evaluated there. Similar to how, like, Metacritic, you'll see generally lower scores than on Rotten Tomatoes for things. It's just how things are tallied, right? It's how they're scored. And counted, and who knows? There's lots of stuff that happens that we don't have access to, but there is no mention of Rotten Tomatoes to provide some balance to this article. Excuse me. Roughly 36% of votes gave the show a 10 out of 10, with around 18% of votes being a 1 out of 10 for the series. Out of the 2.7 thousand 1 out of 10 ratings on the site, only 11 of them had actual reviews attached. I didn't verify this because I don't care. One called the pilot a knockoff of Twin Peaks when the show was simply referencing any detective show. No, it was very clearly spoofing Mayor of Easttown and the Nordic noir tradition more broadly, but very clearly a direct spoof or parody of Mayor of Easttown, which is one of the things I actually liked about, for especially the first episode, was that the Nordic noir vibe and how goofy that was. That was fun. Very WandaVision-y, right? So, these kind of coordinated attacks don't do anything. Real quick. Coordinated attacks. The suggestion here is that 18% of the reviews, that full 18%, are just coordinating some kind of an attack. Like 2,000, almost 3,000 people just got together and were like, let's attack this show. Now, granted, I think there are a good chunk of people who are just going to hate this show because it is female-driven and all that. There is some truth to that, of course. There are also a contingent of people who will give it a 10 out of 10 for the same reasons, but on the opposite side, the flip side of the coin. Not a very interesting observation to make. The only time their hatred of a show got it cancelled was The Acolyte. I have to just keep stopping. People hating a show doesn't get it can't like a coordinated review bombing has never gotten a show canceled, right? Just because people hated The Acolyte and review bombed it on Rotten Tomatoes doesn't get it canceled. What gets a show canceled is that viewership numbers are not high enough to justify the cost of making the show. And as we all know, the cost of making The Acolyte was extremely high. And it wasn't a very good show. Like, people didn't show up. They didn't show up not because people review bombed it on Rotten Tomatoes. They didn't show up because they tuned in for a couple episodes and were like, this isn't for me, because it wasn't very good. That's how it works. Now, either Rachel Leishman doesn't know how this works, or she's lying because she's an activist. Either way, it's bullshit. You got it cancelled, and that had nothing to do with them review bombing the show and everything to do with the toxicity surrounding the fan base. Thanks to certain fans, we love the scare quotes here at the Mary Sue. What's the difference between review bombing and toxicity in her definition? That's a weird thing to say, right? Isn't that considered toxic, right? I don't know. I think to them, they think this sends a message. Buddy, 5.6 thousand reviews gave it a 10 out of 10, so it isn't doing what you think it does. Okay. Still failing to find the point here. After a while, this has to get boring, right? Like you wake up every day and think to yourself, let me just hate on everything that is coming out. Your life has to suck, right? How is that a fun way to spend your time and energy? Nearly 3,000 reviews, 1-star ratings on a show that you just simply don't have to watch if you're not into it. Well, literally every word of this article could be flipped on its head and directed back to the author. Doesn't it get boring writing these same articles over and over again? Don't you get sick of, you don't have to care about these 1-star reviews, right? Just like these people don't have to watch the show. You don't have to get all worked up about them not liking it or leaving a bad review. it's the same thing. You're just doing the same thing in reverse and are so blissfully unaware of it that you can't possibly see the irony in all of it. The biggest issue with review bombing is that these people are making their own nonsense everyone else's issue, which you are also doing. You don't have to like everything, but making your personality all about trashing it? Pathetic, honestly. Stop making your hatred everyone else's problem. Look, I try to look for the joy in things, but there are movies and shows I don't like. I said my piece on them. Piece. on them, and when they came out and moved on. Did you make a review? I mean, you're a media critic, right? So you probably are allowed to review the things you don't like. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of the people who posted an IMDb review of Agatha All Along posted it and then moved on with their life. Are they not allowed to do what you do all the time? Or is there some special badge we have to get in order to leave a review of something we like or dislike, or especially dislike, I guess? Did you see me going online and encouraging people to review bomb the thing? Why does these ads keep jumping me around? Oh, where did it go? Oh, here we go. No, because it was my issue, not the rest of the internet. No, but you're going online and telling people how to think about things. You are doing the thing you're saying you're not doing. It's truly remarkable. This kind of article. Just honestly, and I know, I get into this, and I keep making these videos about the Mary Sue doing this shit. But it's just, as someone who does media criticism for a living, it's amazing. It's amazing to me that stuff like this gets published. That's the real crux of the problem. These YouTube talking heads who want to hate on things are encouraging others to trash the show, and those who like it. Why? Because someone found joy in something you didn't. These ads are driving me crazy. It's foolish and honestly upsetting that this is the new norm when a series comes out. But it's not really. I mean, because there are plenty of series that come out with women in them that people love. Mare of Easttown, again, very, very, very popular show among men and women. The Arcane, which is about to get its second season. Friggin' Fallout, which had a female lead. Ella Purnell's in both those shows I just mentioned. Yellow Jackets, which just came to Netflix. So many shows featuring women that are not review bombed. Now, I know in the Marvel and Star Wars communities, this is more of a divisive issue. I get that. Okay. But honestly, we'll go back to WandaVision. It was not review bombed. People generally liked that show. Hawkeye had female leads, was generally fairly well liked. I mean, I don't think it was anything special, but certainly wasn't review bombed. So we have to start thinking, maybe some of these things are happening for a reason. And again, 81% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes suggests to me that this is just an invention of these kind of authors who want to find controversy in everything for clicks, and so that they can keep on beating their drum to anyone who will listen, which I don't think is many people when it comes to the Mary Sue. Agatha All Along getting review bombed was, unfortunately, only a matter of time with how these YouTubers talk about the series. Luckily, it is limited to IMDb, and it does still, the praise for the show is heavily outweighing any of the naysayers pushing back against it. Why is that? Wouldn't it be exactly the same as The Acolyte? And wouldn't it be canceled by now if these YouTubers and their followers had so much power? This is unexamined here in this article. But the next time your gut reaction is to review bomb a show, maybe don't. You can't literally do that. A person individually can't actually review bomb a show. If I go to IMDb and I give a negative review for something, I'm not review bombing it. I'm an individual. Just because a bunch of other individuals also do the same thing doesn't mean it's review bombing. Now, when review bombing actually happens, which I think is a phenomenon, I don't think it's so much coordinated as there's just so much backlash. You'll see this in video games, right? A video game will come out and will have really, really terrible monetization practices. And a whole bunch of people will go and give it terrible reviews. Or we've seen it on Steam, like with Helldivers 2, when Sony did its bullshit and with the PSN accounts on Steam, and there was just a huge review bombing, right? Now, that's not so much coordinated as an organic, not organized, but organic reaction, backlash to something that people are genuinely upset about. And I think The Acolyte's a great example of how that happened, not just because people were being encouraged. No, obviously, if popular YouTubers are saying things, that's going to have an influence on their following. But that is also just a natural way of the world. Just like if a popular critic gives a good review for something, a bunch of people might go and give it good reviews. Like, this is just how things work. It's not like there's some evil villain sitting in a tower, like sending their minions out to Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. So anyways, maybe think of doing anything else with your time, because that might be more beneficial for you, society, and the well-being of others. Plus, it is boring of you. I just want to go through this and edit it. Plus, it is boring of you. It's such a bad line. It's such a terrible way to... Oh my God. I can't. So, some bad reviews on IMDb do not mean that this show has been review bombed. Just because some people are going to hate on everything, basically, that is this kind of show, doesn't mean that they don't have a right to. I mean, obviously, some people are ridiculous. That's fine. But a lot of times, I think also there is a reason, and that reason has been building up for a long time. And I think if Agatha All Along had come out 5 years ago, I don't think we would see as many 1-star reviews. Like, this stuff does gain traction because people get more and more and more upset, because Marvel has been on a decline. They've had some good stuff over the last few years, but a lot of it has been really bad. So people are just ready to be pissed off. Same with Star Wars. The reason that people weren't review bombing The Force Awakens, or whatever, giving it bad reviews, was because people were pretty excited to have Star Wars back. And it was a promising first entry into Disney Star Wars. And then things took a turn for the worse with The Last Jedi because it was super divisive. And then, from there, people kept getting more and more upset because so much stuff was just not living up to what we'd hoped for. And there have been exceptions. Obviously, fans will rally behind the franchises when they're given something that they think is good, like The Mandalorian or Andor. Or Wolverine and Deadpool, which was, Wolverine and Deadpool was good, but I wouldn't call it great, but it was good. Anyways, I think that Agatha All Along works because it has pretty solid writing. It was made on a much, much lower budget than The Acolyte, so it didn't have to be nearly as big of a success. And it has a pretty solid understanding of what it's trying to do and its own identity. It's made by people who are experienced, and it understands who its audience is. And it's not trying to be something for everyone, and I think that's smart. So now I hope that we get some new Marvel shows that are more traditional, that are more action packed, that are that focus on heroes that maybe younger men and boys can relate to more also, because I think that is an important part of what makes Marvel work. Same with Star Wars. So, but we'll get the reverse articles. We'll get articles to Mary Sue if we get a really masculine superhero show that try to find all the ways that it's problematic. So, as authors like this like to do what I say, not what I do. So that's all I have to say about that. Let me know what you think of Agatha All Along so far, and leave a comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Peace.
Baby, when you could just hold me.